get a 4-hour sheet. What's that? It's going to be a 4-hour sheet. All right, we'll make the call later, then we'll determine if there's any problems. All right. So as long as you're going, you want to check your. That means we have to page down, page up, right? Okay, there's your pre-production. So our time's obviously going to be way off. So we won't worry too much about that. We'll try to keep it on pace. Or actually, Jessica, why don't we just go change, let's go update the time. We may as well to try to actually teach that a little bit while we're doing this. Show it, not teach it. What? All right, well, you're saying it's not?
Like that's on.
What do you Udicci.TV? So it's not connected. It's not connected. All right.
If this isn't working, I'm going to do it.
I agree. I understand that.
See if I can at least hold it. Check with it. I'll try it.
What's that?
Sure, it's like.
Is it actually on?
Yeah.
I saw that one other time. Where is that the correct thing? Let me go up there and I'll go check the mic here. So just watch it for a minute. Hey, buddy. I just have a feeling this is what like Channel 31 was back in the day.
Probably.
Huh?
Probably.
It's going to have to make sure it doesn't run tab on the
Okay. Are we actually streaming? Did you watch one?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Alrighty. So we're huh?
Since we've been sitting here?
So what time is it?
So you want to just keep it on?
I'm just gonna make it. I'll make it like 5:45.
So we're only going to keep it on camera.
Is that?
We're only keeping it on camera for.
Okay. There we go.
Is that an okay English?
I think so.
How can I set up my own schedule?
I got a question.
She's been trying to like send me, did you have a conversation? Sit in the morning, sitting at Clara, instead of sending her an email every time she thinks about it, between 9 and 11, put all your email thoughts on one thing and send her one email. And then let her process it. Why does he does it not the other way because of his ADD and whatever he thinks he sends to her. And then expects her to answer.
And that's the thing, when
Okay.
so I feel like, so I get stressed out because I get all these emails,
What?
17 emails from you, and whatever, every time you
And
do
you think
something,
you have to
that I
answer.
feel like I have to answer them right away. And he goes, oh,
Okay,
no,
why
I
am I looking at
completely
this?
expect, at least one business
Why are you
days.
wrong?
That's not true. Because if I wait, then you send me more emails, did you do this, did you do this, did you do this, so, or I get text messages. It's very hard not having more of this. That's the problem.
You can go sit next to him.
Production.
There's a,
I love it, but.
there's a good one called inspection. It's adults that say they function.
He changed something because he said he was going to.
It's a gift and a curse at the same time.
What is he messing with that?
Well, I don't know if he said.
So some of it is have an outline of what.
Why does it say the second line?
Well,
And I think what I have to always do is shrink my world to is, do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't think anything but that, and it's like, you always have to be. And then what happens is, I have smaller versions of everything, so. here's the
Are you
essential
changing
version.
anything on the
I don't have it in mind.
interface?
This is what I need. And then for the discussion today, I have the curriculum.
So it's like we're trying to go into production, and it's all messed up.
All in either a big bag or a smaller version of it, or
The issue for Sabrina is that she's got.
No, no big deal. And, you know, if they don't get done, that's fine. And in fact, we should probably just tell Julio and Tag take that off if they want.
All of the,
That's just, you know what, let's just relieve some pressure from them. I mean, we're all gonna take some time off, so, you know, we'll let them choose
Then it
that.
shows him, that he's like, that's great.
so.
I'll just tell them, you know, send them your text, but yeah, I'll take care of that, but we just need to get into production.
So now this kind of transitions.
All right, here. Call Justin. I'll take care of it.
here today.
Yeah.
Okay, so just because we're bringing this.
Yeah, you need to just kind of deal with these kind of things with Tim. He just says you try stuff, and the more we keep Tim on the phone, the more he'll get things fixed. He's a tech guy.
So I just.
Tech guys hate to be interrupted. So you just always challenge him, but you gotta find the good ones that are willing to step up to the challenge.
No, it's very good.
Okay, so this is what I let's see, I figured it out.
So what happened?
You know, if I wrote it out, you would put down on his desktop and then you would assign things, you know, and then, you know, whatever. But then when he looked at it, he was like, great start.
I just thought it right.
So if you are the administrator, I thought you thought that good. Okay, this, and I can do that.
You told us what she's saying, Roger.
So
Because he'll give an assignment, but he wants to do it too, basically.
She's having fun, too much fun doing it.
Yeah, we did. Okay.
So, just like here, what do you want to do? So I'll follow Chuck.
Yeah, and that's it, like, if this is what we've done soon, I like to keep saying, I don't want you guys sticking around for.
Wow, we're gonna transition.
That's all I want, we're gonna food or something.
It's not like,
Well, if you want to do that, you don't want to take too long. It's up to you.
The biggest thing too is because it's constant emails and it's not face-to-face conversation, so much is lost in communication. And talk about that all the time with this person.
can we close the browser?
I don't know how to get things done by sitting down and talking about it and then go do it and then, you know, whatever. And you got 10,000 emails on there.
Are you two talking to the same people?
No. Hey, Julio. How much? Just wanted to let you know, if you know, if you guys are running late or just need to, you know, take the, you know, the night off, take it off. what we're actually going to announce tonight, that we're going to do some sort of a break through, or at least we'll come back to
Was that
Thanksgiving or
first
Easter. But basically, so we can start enjoying some of the holiday stuff that's going on and really prepare for the new year and, you know, have some fun. So if you guys need to turn it off, just take it off. And we've got technical difficulties anyway, so don't feel good about it.
Okay, hold on.
No.
If it was working.
No. What I'm saying is that, you know, we're going to simply say this. After next week,
Yeah, it's working.
we're going to get out and, you know, we're doing so much stuff in the community that maybe we're going to just not go into production constantly, but we will go into it if we have a good reason. It's just right now, we're stretched really thin. So if I can even get a couple breaks, like a week off here or 2 weeks off here or there, we just need a break for the planning, and we're going to be heading down to Atlanta. And these are things that, like, I'd like you to be a part of when you can, and when you can get into it, because it's, you know, it's this whole social entrepreneurship movement, and it is all about, like, building community. So at some point, I want to get further involved, but I think, you know, that will come in at the right time. Does that make sense? And it's kind of up to you to kind of figure out when that works for you. Okay, yeah. We're going to try to do a lot. We're having some technical difficulties right now. There's some, you know, whole data issues that are happening here. So we're not sure how far we're going to be able to get tonight. We'll get something done. We may just record it. Yeah, just record, you know, just call us or, you know, text too. And if we do end up just ending in a short night, we'll meet you guys out somewhere. All right, we'll talk to you later. All right.
That's good.
We're good? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Hey. All right. We jump. Whatever, you know, let's do something. Yeah. So, good. I'm good with that. Let me get a water. And I'll tell you what. Why don't you just leave the thing off? It's you.
Why don't you do the bridge and then we'll get going.
What do you want to do? Oh, just kind of take it off?
Yeah, we're going to talk about what it is, and then we'll...
Okay. Let me just
Coke.
Coke and what?
Sour. Yeah, no, it's weird, but it's okay. It's good.
So how long of a session do we have now?
How long? An hour? Or you want to go?
Okay.
I mean, if he can't sit down later, he doesn't really have anything until 7, so hour.
We're gonna go eat dinner up here in a little bit. Are you gonna eat here? Here? Yeah, are you? So are you guys gonna do it here?
Yeah, we're going.
We're doing it and
You ready?
have your conversation, and then, are you gonna stay and eat, or are you gonna, what are you gonna do? You're here for the night, right?
Yeah, we're here for the night.
Okay.
Yep, let's go.
All right.
Do you want anything there? Or you
Good. I want to put Star Wars cup up there. Be advertising.
Oh, yeah. All right. You know, it just occurs to me, in the grand scheme of live social media production, I suppose, 50 minutes beyond schedule is not so bad. So we can relax. We're good. So I welcome you to Udicci.TV. We are a little bit late today, but you know what? Pretty much right on time.
It's a relevant message, so it's on time.
Yeah, okay. Today, I think, is honestly one of the best messages that we've had in Udicci about what it is that our brand does and what it is we're trying to do to help change our communities and to help change our world. And there's nobody to tell that story better than you.
We'll take the check.
Yeah. So, David, take it away.
I thought what we'd start with, Chuck, is this broad view of social entrepreneurship. I know we've been talking about it, and we probably need to put some definition for folks that might not know what it is. But if you look at it from the bird's eye view, that if you apply the concept of social entrepreneurship, you can transform communities, people, and the message. So what is the broad view of social entrepreneurship? So the Institute for Social Entrepreneurship came up with a curriculum. And really it's our roadmap, our guide to help people not only see what social entrepreneurship is, but see themselves in actually accomplishing it. So what's the broad view? Is that you can solve almost any problem using entrepreneurship. And the trick is to figure out which problem you want to solve. And that's really what we do, is figure out what the pressing problem is that you want to solve. And we're going to show you how to use social entrepreneurship as a tool to solve that problem. So let's pick a problem. Maybe that's the...
Actually, I think for me, I'd like to sit there and say, I'd like for people to allow that thought to sink in. That point, that social entrepreneurship is pretty much the answer to any problem. They may not understand that. You may not get it yet, but you kind of just have to trust that it's true.
Right.
And follow down a journey to see why it's true.
Yeah, and I think at the end of it is going to be an ownership of a problem that now becomes your responsibility to solve. But not on your own, but collectively with a team of folks that are going to help you address that need.
And there's a lot of characteristics that we're going to be looking at.
Yeah, right.
And it's kind of cool. I got to say, when I went through this unit, it just was, yes, this. It was the eye-opening moment where we said, you know what? Finally, the forces of good have come together, and we're just going to take over. I'm sorry, that's the marketplace talking.
No, but I think it's time. I think it's time
It is.
that people see that social entrepreneurship is a process. And if they're willing to stay on the journey, and they don't abort what they're attempting to do, they're going to come up with a solution for that pressing problem.
Yes.
So there's really 4 frames to our process. First is you have to have a team, because any solution can't be a solution by itself. So what we're looking to do is develop teams of folks around that problem.
What do you mean by that? Any solution cannot be a solution by itself.
Okay. Any problem that we see is more complex than our individual ability to address that problem. So let's take, I'll take a hot topic that many people are talking about, but no one's really asking the core question. Let's take the NFL.
Yeah.
Right, it's in the media. Everyone's talking about it from an enforcement standpoint. We're talking about it from this issue. Did anyone really ask? We're asking people to not be violent, but be violent. So those are conflicting things. So we could address that issue. And that doesn't have to stop.
I got you.
So you have to really, and no real problem can be solved by one individual because problems are co-created by many individuals.
It has to
So
be
the solutions have to be
unwound in the same way it was wound up.
Right, and so the solutions really are, you need an entrepreneurial team, and that team has to be trained, and that's what we help them do, is figure out what is the team, who needs to be on the team, and what role do they play on the various components in addressing the problem.
You know, that was one of those things that if that right there didn't excite you, you kind of need to check your heart, because if then you're going, there's nothing exciting there, that's because you're making it all about you. But if when you get it about the team, you're like, oh, that's encouraging. It's like, we got the boys upstairs. We got the Gates Child football team upstairs.
Right.
It's like, they got to have belief, but it's something bigger than themselves. They got to have the team, right?
Right, so the concept is that by yourself, you can be this big,
Yes.
and that won't address the problem. But with a team of highly trained people that are committed and have the diversity of skills and talents that are needed, you can solve a problem this big.
Yes.
So if it's a small problem, you would need a social entrepreneur. So that's the major difference between entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship is if you want to run a shoe store or a shoe shop, then you might be able to do that on your own. But if you want to teach people how to walk right, you might need a team of people.
Absolutely.
All right, so that's the difference. The second
It's kind of fun in some ways. To be a social entrepreneur requires just a little bit more risk, because it means, you know what? Sometimes you're not going to like the truth. You're not going to like what you have to face to accomplish that truth. So it's a little bit riskier to take on a social entrepreneur venture, but the heart is deeper, so the return is probably greater in the end.
And when you look at the view by which people can see opportunity, you see that the problem is this big, but as you get closer to it, and that's that broad view, it kind of starts up here, but as you get closer to the problem magnifies.
Yes.
And if you don't have a team around you to help address those different needs, you'll only see the problem as an issue, not as an opportunity. So that's the second part of what we do.
And it's like putting an army of people behind one point. It's like, here's the point, I'm going to put a layer them all together, and the larger the team is, the easier we go through the wall, if you will. That is kind of that economic burden that we have right now in our country.
But think about it, is when you have critical mass,
Mm-hmm.
and you have talent,
Mm-hmm.
and you have the resource of thought
Mm-hmm.
and creativity and problem solving, you can almost solve just about any need if people stick around long enough for the opportunity.
I hear people talk about quite often, people who are, they refer to go, you know what, I'm from Missouri, it's the show me state,
Mm-hmm.
right? So how do we go about showing people that that is the truth? Like after we build the team, where do we go from there?
I think people are disenfranchised with sitting around. I mean, we have meetings for just about anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think people want to see what is the path to being successful. What is the roadmap? And I don't think there's one roadmap, because I think the complexity of the problem determines the roadmap.
Sure.
So I think part of it is for them to see that, hey, we can take the hill, and that's opportunity, and that's our winning concept. And if they see themselves in the winning concept, then they're more apt to be bought in or sold in. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. If you're a champion, that was like when Roland Williams was on the show a few weeks ago, and he's and what really kind of hit me. There's two parts when he was here, and he talked about being a champion, and one was the first time that he got asked to go up to Syracuse University.
Yep.
And he's like, what am I doing to go to Syracuse University? And it's his father tells him, he says, he goes up there, he's working out, and he's calling his dad up, and he's like, Dad, these guys just are not that good. They're really not that good. And he's like, all right, and then calls his dad back the next couple days, same message, dad. And his dad finally says, good, he goes, you know what? Did you ever think that you were good? And that you do belong on that field? And he said that changed his life, right? But it had to be more than him. He had self-limited himself, right, in his understanding.
So that's a great example. So the social entrepreneur is not in the game just to move a product or service.
Yes.
Their goal is to solve the complex problem, be it social or business or economic issue. So with that in mind, they're going at it with the lenses that there's no way this problem can be solved by one individual's efforts.
Right. So once you convene the team, you start identifying that opportunity. There's an entire process. Do you want to go down that process or talk about the next
Yeah,
step?
so the opportunity is like, the way I equate it is, it's like putting on 3D glasses, looking at ordinary problems. So if you put on 3D glasses right now,
Yeah.
your vision's going to be impaired
Yeah.
because you'll be seeing something that should be in 3D, not something in natural visual.
And if we could see it in 360 or the infinite number of degrees of the entire sphere.
Right.
Yeah.
So what we have them do is look at the problem through a three-dimensional and multi-dimensional way. All problems are both physical, natural, and spiritual. So people need to look at all the dimensions of why the problem exists. And the solution has to be more complex than the problem.
I think it's interesting. You hear things like spiritual, right? And I know that's not for tonight's show and it's for another time, but I'm really kind of interested in that because in today's society, that's an interesting thing. We have to respect the different, religions that are out there or different faiths that are out there. And we do have to show that respect, right? Because other than that, it's kind of an indication of there's a problem. So it'll be an interesting conversation when we get to the spiritual side. So after you've gone through those three pieces, do we step into
The winning
point or
the winning concept
Okay.
is where the team and its talent comes together.
Okay.
Now you have a team that has talent
Okay.
and
Yep.
commitment.
Yep.
You have the opportunity, the problem that you're going to solve,
Yep.
and you have the winning idea.
Yep.
All of those come together to develop a winning concept. And the concept has to be sustainable.
Yep.
Meaning it has to be profitable. Not only do you have to solve a problem, you have to have an economic engine or economic driver that keeps it going without the problem putting it out.
Yes.
So think about an everlasting light that has to shine in order to
At least has to do 1% better than the year before, kind of thing. At least has to grow.
Right.
Yep.
So, and then also, it has to have a customer that's going to feel it by creating a product or a need or a service that fuels the solution.
That there's a value to that.
Right. And you have to use often the people that are part of the problem, they have to become part of the solution.
Which is going to be, there again, that's kind of that psychological, or psychology, not psychological, that's a lot of fun to look into that. And also that branches over to branding at the same time.
Right.
So people, as they're learning about these different facets of their own life, they're actually learning about their business too. And it has to have these points of crossing that bring that fullness and definition to the solution.
All right. That's an example. That's a great way of looking at it. Let's take the Roland Williams example.
Okay?
Roland, from what I read, is trying to solve the issue of dropout rates in young African Americans in inner cities, increasing their retention in terms of staying in school, increasing their graduation rates, and using football as a medium or an idea to get them to buy into something. So, okay, I like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So here's my question is, how can, instead of finding external sources of support, how can the power of the team and the individuals involved in the program, how can they generate or create a winning concept that involves them, that sustains the measure itself?
I think
So
people-
instead of lowering their value, they now
That's it.
have to become part of the
Part of
team.
the greater value.
And guess what? They still have to go to school.
Yep.
They still have to perform in the classroom, and they still have to.
Actually, almost like the expectations are higher, but they're self-inflicted expectations.
Well, and here's the point. On that journey that they're on, they go from being a part of the problem to becoming the solution.
Absolutely. And that's wonderful because from my side, I'm like, they could be the solution to a marketplace. And it could be a demo, it could be down to 10 people. And as long as you can profit on those 10 people and give back to the community, and you can make a living and do what it is you want to do, I mean, small home businesses are a wonderful solution to our economy.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things, and I don't know, did I skip ahead a little bit? Did I give away the,
I'm thinking that instead of them having problems with tutorial or reading, why don't they start their own Sylvan learning program?
100%.
Right? So here it is. The people that were underperforming now are performing. And they're not just performing, now they're exceeding expectations, right?
Absolutely.
And now they're creating an enterprise that funds their very program and solves their issue. So now we've taken a concept that Roland has, and we've added social entrepreneurship. And the very issue that they have becomes their solution. So now, instead of just having people that are passive, what we would call them is, we'd call them roadside scholars, or we call them scholars. So the athletes get scholarship.
Okay.
So they're scholarly. And you're like, well, wow, we realize that the importance of this knowledge, and we now can share it and teach others.
Yes.
And we're going to charge them to help them with their school.
Yeah, and why would, look, education has great value. Knowledge has great value, but it's relatively worthless unless you put it into action and make that experience worth something.
Right.
I mean, the greatest knowledge in the world and all that other stuff, great. You may have all the instruments, but put it into action.
So there's a good example of how you take something that's a problem. And it's a big problem because 57% or 58% of high school graduates are failing or are not prepared for college. So we take the very problem, which is huge, and we create a solution, and a sustainable solution that they own, operate, and grow.
And it's like they're either a part of the solution there and able to profit from it, because that's not a bad thing.
Right.
Or you are part of the problem. It's two sides of a the hourglass, right? And which side are you? And the more we can keep kind of coming behind.
I will say though that in order to come up with a solution like that, it takes a lot more time and a lot more depth, because you have social aspects that you're trying to solve and business aspects that you're trying to solve.
Mm-hmm.
He's solving the social, which is retention. We're mixing the two together and creating a winning combination. That is the winning concept. But you can't be afraid of what you don't want to face, which is that really they don't value, they might not value school, and they don't value knowledge. So if you could say, okay, we don't value school, we don't value knowledge, that's the core issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
At least face it. It's like that.
Where they're going.
You're confronted with the truth. What are you gonna do with it?
Right, so now we have to get them to value knowledge and information, and that's the core part of their solution in some way.
Absolutely. And then there would be the application piece.
Well, I think now it's like, okay, what resources do you need? And our next part of it is what resources do you need? Because it kind of goes this way around the circle. To look at, we need people resources, we need knowledge, we need classroom, and all the resources that they need are probably available.
Just real quick, we need lines on here.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Julie, we need lines on the road for the journey. Thank you.
Little arrows.
At what point?
Directional arrows.
Page 2 on Unit 2, Lesson 1. I'm just taking
He's
it later.
razzing me. He couldn't see where we were going.
Okay, gotcha.
I thought it was like, more like this. I thought it was more like a Z.
Yeah,
I tend to complicate things.
He was creating his own world.
Okay, are you guys on and talking to me?
Yes, we are.
This is called social media.
I'm
Okay.
not talking.
All right.
So it's identifying the resources that you need. And it's not just the short-term resources you need. What are you going to need long-term? And here's the biggest fuel. It's not money that's the greatest fuel. It's the human capital to solve its own solution. People resources. So instead of them being a resource use, they're going to be a resource too.
They're gonna be a producer instead of a consumer.
You got it. And in order to do that, they have to value what they bring to the table. So that's
Absolutely.
another aspect.
And just think the gears. You know what? Acknowledge what you know.
Right.
Bring your greatest talents and learn from there. Make your talent stronger.
Yep. And I think
that's one of the most encouraging pieces for me of this, is the personal growth that's offered through this.
Well, here's the, instead of asking the question, how can I get help for what I need, this is sort of saying, how do we develop a winning concept that we all have a piece in? And we have this concept where we're saying that we say about staying in your lane. My lane is to help people utilize the journey. My job isn't to be their journey. So if we stay in our lane, we all have a role that we play on the process. So my goal is just to share this.
And help to organize these steps to their journey. Because everybody, to your point, everybody's journey is a little bit more, so you actually put them all together as quickly as possible to reach their goals.
You got it.
Okay.
And then the next step is really to implement, manage, and leverage that venture. Implementation is the hardest thing because you go from, here's a concept, to facing all the litany of challenges that you have in implementing the concept. Anytime you have people, and you have resources, and you have time, and you have problems, you got issues to implement it. And I think that's where
Absolutely.
our partnership in figuring out how do we match all these things together
Yes.
so that people have us as a real solution is really the challenge. And how do they do it with variables?
And I guess when you say your solution, so audience knows, by that we literally mean delivered to our handheld in, real-time movement of your solution.
Well, I think part of it is that handheld.
Absolutely, but all the education's right there and everything else. Because one of the things I think that, and I guess I want people to start actually seeing that bigger vision is, if people understood the value of this alone, they'd be knocking down your door. If they understood that 1 year from now or less, we're literally saying it's going to be delivered on their phone, right? You'd probably get some help taking the phone, because this is amazing.
Well, I was talking with some students and I was chatting with today. It was sort of like what we call bedtime before class starts. And they were talking about the iPhone 6. And we were talking about the iPhone 6S. I guess there's a bigger version of it. And they said most people will run out to get something that they don't need. So as Americans, we consume things that aren't necessarily essential to where we're going. This is the most essential thing that I think is important because it's about their time and their money. So are they going to consume the essential thing? Are they going to consume things that have very little or no value? So this is the most important discussion about what are people utilizing with the most valuable resource, which is their time. And most people spend more time on frivolous things than things that truly matter.
And so, yes, I 100%. I think that's it. I think we've lost to social media and in media in general our relationships, and we simply need to make more time for them because we've been so consumed and inundated by our demands. We need to find time when we literally go, you know what? Unavailable between this time and this time, and my social media just takes a break. And then I can come on and step back in so that we can have the time with our families. Because if we don't take control and we don't get, I'm sorry, I'm on my soapbox though.
That's
a little
okay.
bit. Yeah, I'm sorry.
But I think what you're saying is what are you doing with the most valuable resource, which is the time that you have to invest in solutions that are important. And one of the things that we do with people is we help them to figure out what type of social entrepreneur they are. And we have a framework that we use.
Can we, guys, can we go forward?
Oh, they have it right there.
Yeah.
Oh, that was it?
That was
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. They're already there.
All right.
So the framework really has 4 overall types of social entrepreneurs. The first type is a community developer. And within that community development framework, there are really 3 things: housing development, economic development, and civic engagement and empowerment. So if those are the things that light your wick, or where you have your priorities, or where you see the solutions, community development is yours. The second one is schools and capacity, and where people want to have education or knowledge base or things along that line, schools and capacity is their frame. The other 2 frames are social development,
Sure.
and that could include anything regarding support to families or government, or things that involve equitable justice systems. That's kind of all that whole social development. Really, it is about how we treat them.
Yeah.
And then lastly, innovation and special projects, this is where the scientists and those mathematicians and all those folks, anything to do with solar and anything to do with
It's that
natural
fun
resources.
R&D that we all love to watch on the different channels. Like, what are they doing? It's so wow.
Actually-
graphene.
Udicci would be in that last category, because what you're trying to create is a unique way that people interact within space.
Yep.
And so social solutions, I would put you in that category of innovations. But the hard part with the innovations is you have to make it plain so people see how to use it.
Yes, and that's difficult. That is difficult, and that is part of the journey, right? Because it's easy to be a visionary. It's another thing to be so hyper-focused that that thing you saw in front of you that you thought was, oh, look at the magnificent sun. Man, that was nothing until you focused in on going, what's the important piece? And it's this nugget, and you tend not to find that nugget until, you know, you've got years of mining to it. But you can expedite that.
Yeah, I think what we help people do is figure out, and I think there's, the more you go through the journey process, the better off you'll be in terms of applying what it's actually trying to show you to do. So the more frequent you see something, the better off you are in terms of using it, or you'll see its application more often. I think the challenge is that with new cutting edge, or I'll call on the edge technology, people don't know really how to use it because you're asking them to produce something that they want people to value.
Yes.
So instead of most of the media that people have access to is the media is telling them what to say, not asking them the right questions.
Right.
So, and that's the difference between the journey. It's like, we're here to ask you a question that you have already asked yourself. We're here to help you find an answer together.
Which is really why it's interesting. You think in terms of like question-based leadership and all of those pieces, and you're like, okay, they're great leadership mechanisms, but really, they're pathways to the heart. And that's kind of exactly what you're trying to do, is you're trying to actually listen to say, let me help your strongest asset lead and love.
Right.
Love it. How can we not love it?
Well, I love it because this is exciting, because when I saw the value of applying social entrepreneurship and addressing needs on all levels, then I look at, where could you take this? So we have friends that are in Haiti, and so you can go down to Haiti with a concept like this and say, how do you redevelop entire neighborhoods or entire communities using the concept of social entrepreneurship? And here's the difference between the US and maybe somewhere like that. They're so hungry for a solution that if you gave them a framework, they would figure out what the frame should look like, because they don't have a frame anymore. So the framework of government isn't there, the framework of what they used to know isn't there. So they're like, we're innovative enough to create our own frame within our own framework. Just show us the framework. So it's places like that. It's we've been invited to go down to Atlanta to look at communities that have been sort of marginalized or disenfranchised in many ways. How can you apply this principle or these principles in addressing entire communities within a defined area, of course, and using the concept of social entrepreneurship? So you can also see it in Rochester.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's not relegated to any one community. It's who's hungry enough to see the opportunity, who's wanting to implement it, and then who's wanting actually to see how the next iteration of their community looks like by applying this concept.
You know what? What just kind of hits my heart and has a little fun with this is simply this: I think I'd rather sit down for a dinner than all the chasing of the food I keep trying to do each day. You know, I think I'd rather take that break and go, you know what? Let me listen for a moment. Minister, come on, get this heart real, calm it down. And that's, again, people may think I'm selling this, and I am. We're a marketing company, no, I am. But it's absolute truth. It is encouraging. It is spot on. I mean, and we're seeing it happen in Rochester. We're seeing the effects of it, of what it is that we're implementing, and we're already seeing it work.
I think what we have to do is show them pieces of the puzzle within each frame. Because if we show them the big picture, it might look kind of confusing. But social entrepreneurship has the ability to, one, be a community-wide investment strategy where you're actually redeveloping communities. One, the social issues go away. Because those often impede people from really wanting to invest in the community. And then thirdly,
Are you guys okay?
you get to see real results. So if you have a problem and you don't see any solution, then there are no real results. So all we do is keep showing you different frames of the problem.
And we do have to start focusing on the results. And that's one of the things I guess that I sometimes get up to a challenge in, and I'm noticing that as we're going through this process, that sometimes you need to focus on the results a little bit more than your own understanding. And a little bit more than maybe, and if you're sitting here going, well, the results are there, but I don't understand them, maybe your first inclination could be, I need to understand it. Because if you look at results and they're solid, you know, okay, I can learn because this person got us here, or this happened. And I think that for me has been a point where, so far, this journey has helped strengthen, right? Only because I'm like, okay, I can kind of start to put things in perspective a little bit more. It's just, it's ordering, it's the sequencing of things. Which I think most of us all know that. It's like we know that we have to get organized, and we know that but we don't take the time to do it. And I think that that's a big piece that it's comforting.
You know what? Part of my the privilege that I have is walking beside social entrepreneurs. And part of the frustration is as we walk beside them, oftentimes people are resistant to use a process because they want to create their own, and they don't want to follow someone else's framework because they like the creative process.
Absolutely, absolutely. Oh, creativity is wonderful.
But every successful person that I know follows a simple rubric or a simple method of doing what they do, and they do it over and over and over again. So my goal is, we don't want to change who you are. We want you to just follow a proven method that's going to help you ensure your success quicker and faster. But you could be in a hurry to go nowhere and realize that you haven't gone anywhere.
Exactly.
And I think part of it is to slow us down and figure out what the framework is. And this is our proven process. The beauty about what we do is you don't have to wait on local government to come up with a solution.
Exactly.
You don't have to wait on the city planners.
You know what I have to appreciate real quick, and this is one of those, shout out to Rochesters, if you will. Our city wants to get engaged. Our city wants to be a part of it, and that's, I honestly, with how great they've been about what we're doing in Joseph Avenue, and they're saying, hey, we'll get out there. If you're going to be active in our community, we'll get out and support you. And I think that that's something we have to do as a city. So, hey, shout out to Mayor Warren.
And I think part of it is that no one entity has the solution. The answer is in the people who are asking the questions. So don't just ask the question, be the solution. And part of that is, how do you want to see your community? And do you own the solutions and not just talk about it? So.
And there's a big piece, and I know we're not going too deep into that tonight, but that owning of the solution, that's a big thing. That's a big thing. It doesn't mean like, it's not like, I've got this. It's, I'm responsible for it. And it's a little bit different. So cool, let's try it for me. So, you good?
Yep.
Okay.
What?
Right?
Yeah, I just want to make sure you got it. Okay.
There's some traits that social entrepreneurs often share. The hard part with entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs is that the valuation of their character qualities are not valued by others external to themselves. So the first one.
Can I ask you a question then?
Yeah.
Do you think that that's accurate, or is it simply that they don't feel that it's valued? Because I gotta tell you, for myself, sometimes I didn't feel a certain way, only to find out that I was wrong.
Okay. I'll take one characteristic that social entrepreneurs have to embrace.
Yep.
Is risk taking.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
So risk taking is the ability to take a chance on something that may or may not work. Most people love the fact that Mark Cuban, for the Dallas Mavericks owner, takes great risk because he helped to develop successful companies, he helped to do this, helped to do that. But in the beginning, no one really liked it because there was a great deal of risk associated with his success or failure. Or if you look at any of the innovators that have come and gone in our communities, no one liked the risk-taking, but they liked the result.
Okay.
So what we have to do is to fall in love with the risk-taking that provides both the framework for success, but also the lessons learned through their failures. And so some of the risks that I've taken have, if I was to evaluate, okay, was that successful? It's the lessons learned that they're willing to share that others do not have to go down. And so risk-taking pushes the envelope of people's comfortableness and creates the detour side and also the ways to go. And that's what really knowledge transfer is in terms of solving problems.
It's mitigating risk.
No, not mitigating risk. The risk that was taken came up with a solution that people now use as everyday life.
Okay.
How many trials?
Oh, yeah, right, I got you.
All right, so let's take George Eastman.
It's kind of the converse of mitigating risk.
So how many trials did George Eastman have in terms of creating or perfecting the photograph or the ability to capture a moment? So many people love the fact that moments can be captured, but are they in love with the fact of the lessons that were learned, and are they willing to share in those?
And that, right there, if the photograph changed our world, imagine what the transference of a moment and the knowledge from that moment could do again.
Right. And what I'm asking us to consider is the thing that people dislike most about entrepreneurs, or social entrepreneurs, is their ability to try something and it may or may not work. If we never explore the ability to may or may not work, how do we get the solutions that do work?
That's a good
So
point.
who's going to go do those or try those out?
So in some ways, one of the issues that a social entrepreneur is going to face is simply some rejection from the marketplace because they failed so many times. And it's kind of like their character appears damaged, but ultimately it's not their character. Sure they could have learned, maybe they had to learn something. We all have to learn something. And we kind of need to teach the marketplace or the people, and go, you know what? Failure's not a problem, it's quitting.
And I wouldn't even say it's the quitting, it's the asking the right questions.
Okay.
While that person is trying to develop a solution. So one of the reasons why I want to partner with you guys is that you're going to be asking and seeing questions asked that are going to be needed around the globe. The solutions,
beautiful.
questions
Yes.
that are going to be asked. And they already asked you in part
Are
of
you
your-
following this right now?
in part
You're
of
not.
your-
Go to the bathroom. You would love. You have to go back and watch this piece, but watch it from where the current interface is. And basically, what David was saying is, as soon as we start identifying the questions, maybe the ones that don't have the solutions, that instantly is the growth of the entire system.
Right. So it's posing, and that's why I often will don't ask me the wrong question. Ask me the question that really matters. And that is what we're talking about. And the reason why, that's the last one on this list in terms of what we cover in the curriculum on this particular unit, but that's the most important question. Because bold answers or bold solutions ask deep questions.
Okay.
All right?
And I do like that. And just real quick, I need to take a break.
Okay.
And I'm going to do a little pitch. Bold, now I didn't say that again, I'm going to do a little pitch for next week for the renewal. What you said, bold questions.
Bold solutions require deep questions because it's only in the depth of that question that you really can explore what a solution is. And that's really what, I have to be honest, most people don't ask me the right questions because they're afraid that the solution that they came up with won't address the problem. So at the Institute, that's really what we're looking for. And the reason why I want to partner with Udicci and what you're doing is that if we keep asking the right questions, we're going to come up with some solutions to some very complex problems in our schools, communities, and abroad. And in sharing those solutions, we could see a commonality of how they're addressed, not only in our world, but in the scope of communities around the globe.
I hope people are hearing this message. I hope people start listening to this message because it's going to happen, and it's going to be wonderful. And when you talk about those bold and deep questions, again, just next week at renewal.
Yep.
And I just kind of want people to come into the whole idea of next week is exactly like the Henry Beecher Ward quote there, that nature loves to glory in death more than life, and everything green desires to die in glorious color, whatever it is. It's a wonderful quote. This beautifully explains autumn as not for the time of death, but it's for the time of renewal. And it's the time that this year's growth provides for future generations' nourishment. And it's a wonderful message overall, and we're really going to be focusing it all on social entrepreneurship, largely geared toward women next week. Just kind of ended up swaying that way, and truth be told, we need to get some female demographics, because right now our female demographics are like 28% to 72%, so we need to kind of balance that out. So from our perspective, little side note there, I just need about 5 minutes.
Yep.
All right, great. We'll be right back. Medicine. You know what?
No, you're not.
What's that?
You just sometimes ended up where you were.
Alright,
Cities.
She switched on the chair.
Okay, thank you. All right. I was just thinking about a time that my dad helped me play hooky from school, and we were on our way to school, and he says, "Hey, let's go out to New York City." And I think that those are the things that like you don't. I mean, it's just like one of that rare treat. But I think those are the things that you never forget. And those are the relationship things that we were talking about a little bit. Like we got to make sure that we maintain those relationships in our life and not be lost to everything that if you will, the solution. I'm sorry, not be lost to the problem.
I think if you can give people a view, of the world and where they fit in, then people can see themselves fitting into a solution.
Absolutely.
And I know that sounds simplistic, but the car was the solution to get people to see the world. The bicycle was a way you could see your community. And walking used to be the way that people saw their community. So, really what I help people do is have a lens to see what they can't see because they're moving so fast.
Yeah.
Or that they don't see because it's invisible. Every community has a set of understandings of culture
Yes. Absolutely.
and relationships. And if we don't value those, how can you solve a community need and you're not understanding what the community is?
I think that's the piece for me that really strikes home, because if you don't value the community and the only thing you do is value yourself, right, if you will, and what it is that it's about you, you're actually consuming from the community, right? And it always, everybody needs to be giving back a little bit, and that's the encouraging piece, because if the only thing you're doing is being concerned about yourself, it's not going to work.
Okay. So let's take a view of this in a second. And at the heart of what I do is really community building.
Yep.
And it's the subtle difference between an entrepreneur, but the overt difference between an entrepreneur and a social entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is consumed with, how do I move products, services, and people to make a profit? And may never ever see the value of that community. And so I think we need to be cautious that we're creating solutions, but they're not solutions.
Absolutely.
They're distractions from the core issue. And so all communities have X's and O's, crosses, and we call those junctions of where things interact. And if we don't understand the skills, the principles, and the understanding of that community, that's at the foundation of social entrepreneurship.
Absolutely.
So I think it is, everyone wants to have applications, they want to have cell phones, they want to have a movement. But if you don't understand how communities operate and move, you can't be a solution to that pressing issue. So that's, besides the risk-taking, which we talked about previously, understanding the principles and values of the community are essential. I think the next thing is, vision is the ability to see something through until it's achieved.
That was an interesting point. When I read that one today, I think I made the comment, because it's interesting. A lot of people would say, no, I'm a visionary because I can see it. And I would have bought into that many years ago, but as you really do focus the light, that's where the true visionary is. And you don't get to that focus without actually following through on the vision. And it was a moment of like, it's illumination versus just landscape. Okay. So I mean, that was a piece for me that I thought was really, it's cool.
The way I look at vision is, it's the ability to see not only the opportunity, but the end product before it actually appears. And one of the documentaries, you might want to check this out, or folks might want to check this out, is you look at the Brooklyn Bridge. And the Brooklyn Bridge is a triumph over one major obstacle that the builder had, which is CO2. That there weren't enough technologies in place to overcome asphyxiation when you got below a certain level in the ocean, or in the Hudson River at this point. So, but that bridge alone connected Manhattan, Brooklyn, and also others that people travel over every day, but don't see the engineering feat that was
into it.
that was into it.
And the depth of the solution.
And the depth of the solution meant that they had to go further down in water than their ability to see.
You know, I love that. Could you imagine trying to actually go, yeah, that's going to require these resources. You have no idea sometimes when you're getting into a solution how deep you're going to have to go until you go all the way deep.
And here's the reality that the creating of the Brooklyn Bridge actually killed its creator, and the wife had to actually fulfill it along with the son. So oftentimes the solutions that you're trying to do and create are so monumental and so breathtaking that others have to help you. And a visionary can see that.
Absolutely.
And we talk about George Eastman, but a lot of these visionaries were in the turn of the last century. Now we need that visionary thought today for the complex problems that we're facing now and the solutions that we need. So it's kind of turning over again.
What a wonderful time. Because honestly, like we're at a point where, like you're saying, the knowledge transfer, we can just free so many minds, open so many eyes, and bring hope to so many people in a way that probably rivals the printing press in its meaningfulness of purpose. And it's going to happen at a time compressed, 30 years.
I mean,
Sorry, I'm sorry.
I'm thinking about what happened in the early 1900s, between 1900 to 1940.
Okay.
All the innovation and ideas that reshaped how we live today.
Absolutely.
The automobile. You look at the manufacturing and distribution of the airplane. You look at all these solutions that we so readily have accessibility to, but really evolved through man's innovation and their ability to see. So, what does the next reiteration of what we're talking about look like? And that's what vision is all about.
Absolutely.
One of the other aspects that we actually use, characteristics of the social entrepreneur, is someone who is a self-starter. And what that means is no one has to light your wick or get you going. You already have a sense of urgency that you have to come up with a solution, and no one's telling you to get going. So what I feel inside my stomach is, hey, we really need a solution for this pressing problem. And I saw that we've got to have a journey curriculum to guide people through a process. And so no one had to tell me, let's get going. And so no one's telling you and your partners that, hey, we need a social solution that's readily available. You already feel the urgency to do it. So I think that's one of the characteristics that is so cool about entrepreneurs. You don't have to tell them to get going. They already know that they need to be.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so refreshing. And I think one of the things that I really have grown to embrace, if you will, through this journey through entrepreneurship is I stopped looking at people in the marketplace as competitors, and everybody's just a partner. It's not that I don't feel that I have to compete with anybody, because the opportunity is so magnificent that if we would just work together instead of thinking we're competing against one another, that is so freeing. That's such a freeing aspect of the entrepreneurial, experience, I guess.
I think the very next skill, which is actually more important than any other things that we talked about, from community building and risk-taking and visionary and self-starting, is the ability to stay the course in face of obstacles that you face that would put most people to their knees. It's almost like the Rock'em Sock'em robot. Not that you're just getting hit, but that you're staying focused on the main goal in the face of adversity. That is determination. And it's kind of like the sprinter's ability to race to the short line, but the long distance runner who's going to carry the race regardless of all the obstacles that they face.
Yeah, it's encouraging. I think sometimes that feeling of determination has been so diminished in our country. I feel like people have become discouraged, and that once yearning to do something great. I feel like we need to bring that out again, you know, and I don't know what that's going to take, but when I think about determination, that's it. I just want to see people determined again and hopeful.
You know, I think there have been these monumental imageries that we've used that look like determination. But what does it really look like to the average person? And one of the challenges we have are, who are your heroes and who do you look up to? And that's one of the questions we ask people.
Yeah.
And it can't be this far-off person that's ambiguous, like Michael Jordan or some type of athlete. It has to be someone tangible and that we know, that we can relate day to day.
Ah, perfect. Absolutely. It's kind of like your constant mentor.
Yeah. So, to me, the person that my father, I just met your dad. My father was a person who was in the Army. And what he showed me was that you get up every day and you show up on time and you do your best. And he used to hate people that used to slack off. You know, this person didn't want to do their job because he shouldn't have to do that.
Right.
So, to me, determination is you give your best. And one of the things that is, in social entrepreneurship, at the end of each day, you've done your best and you can rest to the next day. It's kind of like that cadence of a soldier in some way.
And it is about getting to that day of rest, and I think that is an important piece. And it's interesting. And that day of rest may literally mean a day of rest. It may mean a couple of days. But I think that's a piece that people also have to hear, is that during this journey, and you're saying they have to pursue to the end, because perseverance is not always easy. I mean, you go through, think about what the Navy SEALs and all these other guys do, what they go through to learn to persevere through to the end of the mission. I mean, if you really, really want to succeed and do something incredible, have them in mind when you're thinking about, like, quitting, right? So sometimes that perseverance really drives you down, but it's what's on the other side of it that you go, yes, that's why I did it.
I guess I have a question for you.
Yep.
And maybe this is the most relevant question that you could be asking with your partners or whatever else. If the thing that you're working on is important and you put it down, meaning you sit down and go do something else, or you get distracted by your own version, what is the causality of you not achieving your goal? I'm just asking.
It's a wonderful question, because I think that's the difference, like the determination that bolts up, that deep, deep, deep root. And for me, I always go back to, seed that is on shallow ground that sprouts up, and you know what? Sun can come and wither it away and blow it away. But when you get that deep root, deep, deep, deep down in there, the idea of putting it down is like taking that root and just ripping it from the solid earth to the very core of it. And like, why would I ever do that? Why would I ever gut myself in such a way as to put down this that I've come to believe in so much?
Well, I don't think it's losing. I think people miss the opportunity here. It's not about whether you're putting it down. It's whether you're allowing it to be shaped.
Yes.
Based upon, it's like play. I think, we sort of have.
Yeah, a little fun right there.
We're having a little fun. But I think part of it is that it's not that you're not learning.
That's right.
Because you have to learn. Because if you stop learning, then your idea can't adapt. It's the ability to allow the idea that you have to be shaped by your present reality. So you have to quickly learn and adapt, which is the last character quality that we wanted to talk about.
Actually, on that one, which I just want to share, I thought it was interesting last night. My wife was sharing something that Richard Branson walks around with a notebook, right? And he always says, I capture every thought. Because it's, if it has value, I need to do something with it. If it has value, I capture it. It's that piece that you're like, okay, I need to adapt, I need to learn. Why? Because
this was just illuminated to me. I just learned something new, and by learning that thing, it just opened up this much. It's an exponential understanding sometimes.
You know what? I'll share with you my secret is that oftentimes people capture their thoughts, their emotions, and they write a book or they author something.
Yes.
I get to author something that allows me to continuously learn from every person that I interact with. So I get a chance to go through the journey literally as we're going through it together. If you see me, all right, I'm capturing moments where I'm learning how not to apply the journey, but learning from your journey that I get a chance to be a part of. So in some way, if we can learn how to adapt these things, and I said it in our last part of our sequence, is that we are facing some of the most complex problems that we face, as a society, as a culture, as a community.
Absolutely.
And if we don't learn how to solve these complex issues, what are we leaving your son, my son, and others the ability to solve? Is that we wasted or squandered the most innate opportunities, and they're left with decimation, not with opportunities.
And that's, you know what, that's a cool, if you go some of the questions. Because I'd love to just kind of have people answer the question. If you know that there's a solution that can leave this world a better place for your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren, and you did nothing about it, what does that say? Because it's in front of us. We have, and honestly, it's in front of us. We have the opportunity to make a significant and huge impact in our country and around the world.
And that's the difference between the social entrepreneur and the entrepreneur, is this. Oftentimes people are running from a solution to a safe place. And they might think that's a good thing to do. But I look at it like this. If we don't take the bold risk, meaning we're not exploring the ideas and the opportunities, then we're taking no risk, which means we're doing nothing. Or we're taking bad risk, which we're squandering the opportunity. Then we really, really aren't living. So I think a lot of people are melting into nothingness by just existing.
Yes.
Or they're on the precipice of doing something great. So, and it's not saying that you want to be this, that you're intentionally running into the fire so you can solve the problem of fire.
Right, you're not trying to be a hero. You're trying to be a preventative measure.
You're trying to live a life of significance for whatever you're called to do. And if that's within this context, it's this. If it's within that context, it's that. And so that's why every social entrepreneur wears the jacket or stays in the lane that they're designed to actually do. And my lane is that I get a chance to go on a journey with people, and I try to stay within that framework in that lane. The challenge is, if you get outside of your lane, then you're in someone else's lane in some way. So
It's good stuff. It's really, and I hope people start to really consider what is being talked about. And I get it. People, we're sitting here talking about some general concepts, and I guess honestly, stick around. You'll eventually hear it all, and you'll get it. But if they get it today, if they...
I'll challenge, people that are watching this is, what is the pressing thing that's in front of you that you can't escape, that it keeps showing its way in front of you? Are you going to walk past it, or are you going to be challenged to be a solution to that pressing problem? And so for me, I get a chance to take people on a cool journey. I welcome the fact that you, Tim, and a few others are meeting with us tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock to go on. We're going to actually go through this unit again. But every time we go through it, we see a different facet of the journey come alive, because it's really a journey that never ends.
Yeah.
So
is that it?
That's it. That's it.
That's the last one?
That's
Perfect.
the last one.
All right. Well, that was, I got to tell you, for me, I was so looking forward to tonight. I actually do believe that this captured
best represented anything we've been trying to do to this point. So I appreciate you taking the time and being very patient tonight before we were off, and I'm hoping that this video is captured properly, because this message needs to be shared. And you know what? It may be an hour and a half long. So what? Watch it. Tell your friends. So what? Watch it.
Yeah. I think that the message really is this, is that for such a time as this, we could be trying to figure out things that really don't matter. So ask yourself the core question, what really matters and what are you focused on? And what pressing issue do you want to address? And that's really what the Institute is all about, help you do.
And if you can't answer that question, just stay tuned and tell people about this, because it's going to be great. I love the song "Glorious Unfolding." I don't know who sings it, but that's what this is going to be. This is going to be a glorious unfolding, and it's going to happen in front of people's eyes. And hopefully they're a part of this.
You know, one of the things interesting, as I had a chance to meet your dad, I was thinking about my own dad. And on a day like today, I might have popped over and said hello, we'd be talking about what's in the news or what have you. And he would always say, you know, whatever you do in life, do your very best. That's all we're asking people. Whatever you do your very best. So he would always encourage me to do that. So,
And I don't think we can ask for anything more than that.
no, we can't.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, with that, that's going to be the end of today's show, and maybe we'll be back, maybe we won't, but we'll let you know if we are. Oh wait, here she is, so we will be back.
Here's Tess.
All righty, here's Tess. How you feeling, Tess?
Okay.
Oh, you're not.